This is a brief tutorial on factoring by grouping. Sometimes when you're solving polynomial equations, the only thing you're going to be able to do is regroup some of your numbers so that you can have a linear factor. And this is an example of that. So factoring by grouping takes some critical thinking and analysis on your part when you're determining which terms to factor or to group. You can factor an x out of all of these. You can factor an x squared out of those. You can factor a 2 out of these. You can factor a -3 out of those. You could do any of that, but your goal is to end up with two linear factors. So you have to think about what is going to make the most sense. And so when looking at this, I have decided that I am going to factor an x squared out of these first two terms. And let's take a look at what that looks like. So we're going to take an x squared out. And if we take an x squared out of x cubed, we're going to be left with an x. And if we take an x squared out of 2x squared, we're going to be left with plus 2. Now I'm going to take my sign and the number that I'm factoring out next. So I'm going to factor a -3. Here, I'll do this in another color. I'm going to factor a -3 out of this. Now, if I were going to factor a +3, I would put a plus sign, but I'm factoring a -3, so I'm going to put a minus sign, -3. I'm factoring that out of those two terms. And if I take a -3 out of -3x, I'm left with x. If I take a -3 out of -6, I am left with a +2, because +2 times -3 equals -6. Now, look at what we have. We have this term right here is equal to that term. Effectively, what we're saying is we're going to take my x squared, multiply it by both of these terms, x plus 2, and then I'm going to take a -3 and multiply it by both of those terms. So because we're doing that, we can rewrite this as x squared minus 3. I'm taking this term and this term, and I'm going to multiply that by x plus 2, since that's equal to this term and this term. Now you've factored by grouping, and you can solve this polynomial.